Hello and welcome to part 3 in the This Is Fine series, where we're looking at the life of Moses in Exodus and to see how we can look to that to help with our fear and anxiety during this time of this pandemic and the coronavirus. So if you didn't check out the last 2 videos, make sure you check them out. Today we're going to just jump straight into Exodus chapter 2, the latter part. And today we have Ezekiel Finlayson from our group reading our passages. So we're going to kick it over to Ezekiel, then we're going to jump right into it. So take it away.
Today I'll be reading Exodus 2, verses 11 through 15. One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day, he went out and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man said, "Who made you the ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "What I did must have become known." When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well.
Thanks, Ezekiel. So really when I thought about this series, this was the very first thing that came to my mind. This is a very anxious, fear-ridden situation that really just makes me anxious even just reading it. When you look at what Moses went through, you can't help but feel sorry for the guy, because when you look at his life up to this point, it hasn't been very easy, right? You could say, well, he grew up in he didn't have any problem. He didn't ever go hungry or anything. Well, yes, but he also grew up in Pharaoh's household, right? And from what we read in Exodus, Pharaoh did not want him to even exist, right? So Pharaoh wanted him dead from the beginning. Now this child is not only not dead, he was rescued by his daughter, brought into his house. Now he not only is this boy alive, but now he has to feed this boy and probably educate him as well. And that's got to be frustrating for Pharaoh, right? Moses was not brought up, I don't feel like, maybe I'm wrong, in a loving household where he was, thought to be a good asset to the family, okay? And so Moses is brought up in this environment where his kind of pseudo dad maybe doesn't want him to exist. And also in an environment that isn't really conducive to him becoming who he's going to be later in life, right? And all of that kind of boils down to this situation where he is kind of feeling this torn between being in 2 places, where he's like, well, I've grown up in Pharaoh's house, but I don't really know my family. I'm not really part of my people, but I'm really definitely not part of their people. He's caught in the middle. And so he gets in this situation where he sees one of his own people, his Hebrew people, being abused by this Egyptian person, and he lashes out and he kills the guy. And so you might be thinking like, wow, that's an overreaction. And actually that's what we're talking about today. Okay, we're talking about the difference between reacting and responding, right? And this is not a new idea. This is not something that I came up with, but this is something that I have to remind myself all the time. Like, are you reacting or are you responding, right? And in this situation, this is a clear-cut case where Moses is reacting rather than responding. And I know those words can sometimes be used interchangeably, but when I think of reacting, my mind immediately goes to baseball, where a pitcher might have just pitched the ball and he's getting a line drive like straight to him, right? And you've seen these videos where almost impossibly they get out of the way and not get like nailed by this hit, but sometimes they're even able to like contort their body to like catch the ball that's coming like really fast, right? And so that's not a situation where the pitcher's like, okay, like I'm going to put my glove over here and catch this ball. No, like their body is just reacting, right? And in sports, that's perfect. You need to be able to react, especially in like sports like football, basketball, where it's so fast paced. Your body just has to kind of move and react to the situation. But when it comes to life, a lot of times our reaction is not as, I guess, quality or not as thought out as our response might be. So we're looking at the difference between reaction and response. And here I think Moses reacted rather than responded. And like I said before, a lot of times our reactions come out of where we are in life or come out of what we surround ourselves in life. And if we look at Moses' life, he's not surrounded by the most, I guess, uplifting situation. Because we see here that Pharaoh, when he's faced with conflict and when he's faced with anxiety, his reaction is to kill people, right? When the Hebrew people started to become too numerous for his liking, he said, well, let's just kill them. And we see here his response to Moses killing an Egyptian in verse 15. When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses. That is what Pharaoh does, okay? And Moses is brought up in this environment where when anxiety and fear jump into the equation, let's kill somebody. That is what Moses grew up in. And I think it's important that we note this, and I'm not trying to justify what Moses did, because obviously you shouldn't kill people, right? But I think it's more about the product of the environment that he grew up in than, I guess, his true heart and his true nature. As we're going to see, obviously, later in Exodus, we're able to read about who Moses was. I think this reaction is really telling, and I think it really can speak to us today, especially, right? When our back's against the wall, how are we going to react? Or rather, how should we respond might be a better question. So there's a couple things I want to leave you with here, okay? It's a quick one today. But the number one thing is be aware of what you are surrounding yourself with, right? Be aware of what you are surrounding yourself with. Whether it be people or, content, social media, whatever, there's so much content. Be careful what you surround yourself with, because the more you surround yourself with people that are not emulating Jesus, the more you will become like those people. And this is, again, not a new teaching, but it's something to remind us. And I think, especially now when we have so much content and so much time to look at the content, whether it be, coronavirus related or anything else, our immediate response is to kind of be sucked into that content, right? How can I do this or that better to make sure that, I stay healthy? And that's all important. And like I've said in both the videos, we need to follow the guidelines of the CDC, okay? I'm not saying that we shouldn't. We definitely should, okay? But what are we filling our lives with that is going to eventually make us to be more like Jesus? Okay? If you are not surrounding yourself with people who are making you want to be more like Jesus, you're surrounding yourself with the wrong people. Okay? That's just it. Because those people and those things that you surround yourself with are going to in turn be how you react to difficult situations. So that's number one. Be aware of what you surround yourself with. Number two, I think we really need to be asking the question, how would Jesus respond to this? How would Jesus respond to this? I know it might be kind of silly because, that whole what would Jesus do thing was big a long time ago. But one of the things that I've always kind of marveled at with Jesus is not just his miracles that he did, but it was how Jesus responded to people. And that's the perfect word to describe how Jesus interacted with others. He responded to people. And it's because he followed, the whole idea of, what are you surrounding yourself with? Jesus could do nothing without the Father's instruction. His responses were always perfect, and it matched the situation perfectly. Whether it be, there's the extreme side where, he's flipping tables over, you could be like, well, that seemed like a reaction, but really, if you look at it, that's more of a response than anything, right? You go from that extreme to the other side where, he's cornered by the Pharisees and scribes, this lady caught in adultery, and they're like, hey, our law says that we need to stone this woman. What do you say? And Jesus' response is to stop, bend down, and start drawing the sand. That is unreal to me. I'm getting anxious just thinking about that situation. But before we, go and do something, I think we really need to ask ourselves the question, how would Jesus respond? Because if we ask that question, we are inherently pointing ourselves to be more like Jesus. And the answer to that really, I think, is Jesus would always respond by going to God in prayer. And I don't want to make this sound too churchy in the sense we'll stop and pray, but I think our lives need to be a reflection of this prayerful existence, right? Where we are actually going to God, like I've said in different videos, inviting God into the situation and seeing what comes from it. And this is so simplistic, and I know you're thinking this is so simplistic because I am too, but the simple things are the hardest things to really, I think, grab a hold of and do, right? Because when we ask the question, how would Jesus respond? His response would be to drop down and say, Father, help me. And that's what we need to be doing right now. So number one, be mindful of what you surround yourself with. Number two, ask, how would Jesus respond to this? And as we hold these two things, am I reacting? Am I responding? In our hands, I pray that we can, get through this together and say, you know what? I think I responded more than I reacted. I think I prayerfully thought through my actions more than just knee-jerk, reacted to them. So I hope this was helpful today. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below. You can always email me. Just let us know how you're doing. I really appreciate the feedback we've been getting and the support. So thank you, and I can't wait to be with you guys again. So until next time, we'll be seeing you.